your life? And do you even recognize your own uniqueness?
I recognize my uniqueness. How it happened, I think I'm just wired this way. The gift that God gave me was to be born in poverty. And that was the gift. And when you're born in poverty, you actually don't have things that you rely on. And then I grew up with 6 other siblings. And I was the littlest. And I had to learn how to speak up.
Right.
Because they were giants. They were all taller than me, bigger than me. And I had to learn how to fight.
Wow.
And then I had a great mother who never talked to us about not having and what you could not do. So I didn't know that you had to have money to go to school. I didn't know you had to have money to go to ballet. I just didn't know that you had to have money. So what stopped most people actually gave me the drive to do. And then the other thing is really loving who you are.
All right.
You know, the bottom line is that each one of us are unique.
Absolutely.
And it takes too much energy to try to be someone else.
Absolutely.
And I often tell people, you do you, and I'm going to do me.
Right.
And so we have to learn how to live authentically.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so each one of us, I was telling my mother the other day that God gave me the best mother. And everything I needed from my father left us. I was 2. And so I grew up in a single-parent home. And everything that I needed from my father, he gave me before I was born. And that's the 23 chromosomes that he actually gave me. And obviously, that's all I needed. And a lot of people are running around wishing life was different rather than make it different.
All right.
And I asked the question, could things be the way they are because you are the way you are? And what one thing can you change that can change everything? And you can always change your mind. And I discovered that my destiny is just connected to decisions that I make.
All right.
And so where I am today is as a result of a series of decisions that I made yesterday. And then I also discovered if I don't like where I am today, I'm just one decision away from being where I want to be.
Absolutely.
And that's where salvation comes in anyway, because it's all about the renewing of the mind. And so you're either going to be molded and shaped by culture or by Christ. And it's all about decisions anyway.
You know, one of the things that I think is real when you start talking about decisions, one of the things that I think is very interesting about the times that we live in today, women are moving into roles that they have never moved in before.
Yeah, right.
I know that your background is in government and you've been in leadership and you know what it is to make decisions not only for yourself but for the betterment of organizations, of countries, of speaking to a lot of other people. There are many women today who are in positions of power. They're graduating from college at a rate far beyond men today. They are primary breadwinners in their homes. They are going to work. They are going to office. They are mothers. They're in all of those roles. As a woman in leadership, as a woman in authority, as a professional woman, how has faith shaped your life? And what would you say to women who have all the power and responsibilities and stress that men have, and yet they're women?
Well, that's a very, very, very profound question. And I think it's profound because women have always been in leadership. Just because a person doesn't have a title or a label or position doesn't mean that they're not in leadership. And women have always been shaping the world. We've always. There is no one in the universe that has not come through the womb of a woman.
Absolutely.
So when a woman was created to be a problem solver. The Bible says that it was not good for man to be alone, so that means that man had a problem. And so when God... When God created woman, he created woman to solve a problem. And it was the problem that a man had. Now, I don't have problems with being considered second. Because I understand that the second edition is always better than the first. So, to me, it doesn't matter. It really does. I think of Hannah. And there's a lot of women who are trying to find their identity, and they're turning to positions and titles and degrees in education, thinking that's going to solve that hole that they have in their soul. But it doesn't. And if you ask the average woman who they are, they're going to say, well, I'm a mother, I'm a this, that's the role that you play.
Okay.
So we're not talking about roles, we're talking about identity, who God said that you are. I think about Ruth. Ruth was laying at the foot of Boaz. Boaz wakes up and says, who are you? And she answers, the answer is profound. She said, I am Ruth, thy handmaiden. In other words, don't get who I am mixed up with what I do. And for a woman, we have to separate that. You cannot have a family without a woman, but you cannot have a nation without a man. And what God is doing, he's clarifying once and for all the male expression and the female expression, bringing us together like a piece of the puzzle so that we can heal the world, because the world is in crisis. And who cares who has the solution? To me, if God could use a donkey, he could use a woman.
All right.
And so I think our discussion should no longer be about the role of a woman and the role of a man, but the role of humanity, and to be able to help people to figure out what does it mean to be human. You know, and to me, if life is a game, I just want to know what's the rules. What are the rules? And then secondly, a lot of times women turn to other people for answers rather than turning to the Creator. And if we learn how to turn to the Creator, we will find that each one of us have been given a purpose, something to do in the earth.
You know, when you start talking about knowing your own identity, I am Ruth, and she begins with who she is and then talks about where she's from and so forth and so on. Most people, and since we're talking about women, we'll move it and relegate it to women, but it's also true of men. Most people define themselves by where they came from and what they've been through and what happened to them. When you start saying you have to know who you are, help someone who's watching tonight begin to define who they are apart from what they've been through.
Okay, that's good too. When a person tells their story, Bishop, most people tell their story for pity. But this is just life. Life just happens to all of us. And we have to understand that if you tell your story for pity, you undermine your prosperity and progress. You want to tell your story so that you can get principles. I just want to know, how can I solve this? Secondly, if a person reaches on the outside to find solutions, they are enslaved by that solution. But if they reach on the inside, they're liberated. Everything that we need, we're loaded with. This is why your genome is, you read your genome or your DNA like a book. Jesus said, I come in the volume of the book it is written. It wasn't a physical book. He was referring to his DNA. And so if you reach on the inside, you will find out that your DNA is encrypted like words in a book. And that when a prophet prophesies, he's not shooting from just out of the blue sky. He's actually reading these pages in a book. And if you would discover that everything that you needed is encrypted on your DNA. And so when you talk to God, he's not talking about something that he's just making up in his mind to make you feel good. He's talking about something that you are already. And this is what potential is all about.
You need to stay right there. That right there, we gotta stay right there. Stay right there. I think that sometimes when people receive a word from God or a word from a prophet or a prophetic utterance, they think that God is trying to encourage them rather than inform them of what he has planted inside of them. That it is the outworking of the internal that he is speaking to you about, so that you will not allow the disguise of the temporary to block your eyes from the eternal. Am I close?
You're very close. Listen, this is what happened with Jeremiah. Jeremiah has this conversation. And then God says to him, before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you and ordained you to be a prophet. So now he says to God, I'm just a child. And God said, don't ever say that again. Why? Because the words that you speak move molecules, and molecules have memory. And so a word actually creates, it's almost like a train track. And it goes out into the realm of the spirit. But then that same train track brings the response, the exact thing that you're saying. It brings it back to you and troubles back to you as an experience. And so with a lot of people, they're trying to find who they are, and they keep turning to people to affirm and confirm, and the people that they're turning to don't know who they are.
Right.
So if you don't know who you are, you can't tell me who I am.
Right.
And so this is what Jesus said. Jesus said, look, there's some grand confusion about me in the marketplace. Who do man say that I am? Some say that you're this, and some say... He said, let me clear it up once and for all. So here is one person that has the revelation that God gives, right? You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. He's not exactly convinced, but he has a revelation. But then Jesus spends the rest of his life making a series of I statements. And if you don't make a series of I statements, you are forever going to have to live with a series of you statements. What people say about you. And so we have to understand that we should never get confidence mixed up with arrogance. Just because I announce to you that I'm strong and I'm great and I'm powerful doesn't mean that I'm arrogant. I just know who I am. And I refuse to allow someone, I refuse to allow someone's insecurity to be projected onto me. Your insecurity is not an indication of my insecurity. And a lot, we run around, back to what you were asking, we run around turning to people that have never been where we're trying to go. And this is why I love Woman Thou Art Loose. Because women have an opportunity now to be a part of moments that people who have been or are going on a track that they're trying to get onto, and they have an opportunity to listen to wisdom. A lot of people have lacked, say they lack money. And when a person lacks money, what they usually do is they run to another person who has money and tries to borrow the money. But what a person needs when they don't have money, they don't need money, they need information. And what we don't want information, because it means that truth demands a response. And it means that you're going to have to give up ignorance in order to apply wisdom. And so the greatest enemy of an individual in life is not the devil. The greatest enemy of any believer is ignorance. We don't perish because of a lack of money. We don't perish because of drugs or alcohol. We perish because of lack of knowledge. And this is why TBN is so powerful. And your ministry is powerful because it's knowledge-based. Money doesn't rule the world. Thoughts and ideas do. And this is why when God wanted to change the world and empower people, he didn't send a singer. What he sent was the word. He sent information. And in this world, the world blinds the minds of so many people. And I believe that conspiracy is not a theory. If you've been educated in secular education, they gave you language recognition, but they did not give you language comprehension. So that by the time a believer gets to church, all you have to do is throw a few words together. They can recognize the word, but there's no comprehension. If there's no comprehension, there can be no application. If there's no application, there can be no manifestation. And so what God does is he preaches to the minds of believers. He said being transformed by the renewing of your mind. So you come to church not from emotionalism, but you come to church to learn to think. And this is the phenomenon of the prodigal son. The Bible said when he came to himself, he said to himself. And it's not about what people are saying about you that messes you up. It's what you were saying about yourself. And we don't have to wait for a prophet to prophesy. You can prophesy over your life every single day. Every day. And this is what a confession of faith is all about. What are you saying over your life? What have you put out in the atmosphere? And this is the issue. A lot of times we want to blame people. We want to blame situations. In my life, this is how I do it. If I have someone that I invite into a relationship in my life, and that person betrays me, I don't blame the person, I blame myself. Why? Why do I blame myself? Because I gave them permission to be in a relationship. And so it means that it's not the person, because remember, people reflect who you are. And so when you change, the people change. So we try to change things in people and not change ourselves.
Absolutely.
But the moment you change, everything in heaven and earth begins to conspire to accommodate your change.
How important, because most people don't know themselves. They're not in touch with themselves. They don't investigate themselves. They're afraid to spend time with themselves. They'll always invite somebody in to avoid being alone with themselves. How important is it that you spend that time to really investigate your predestined, predetermined purpose in God?
Loneliness is not the absence of people. It's the absence of purpose. And when you find purpose, the right people come. You know, the other thing too, I think people are missing strategies. We usually bring strategies from an old season into a new season. And if you bring a strategy into a new season, you're going to bring the same drama.
Right.
And so we're not just looking for another experience, we're looking for a new strategy. And in this season, what God is doing, he's bringing people into our lives that are actual strategists. The issue is we want everything free. Nobody's willing to pay the price. It's your conversation. It's your conversation. What are you willing to pay for your freedom? You got to pay something.
Right.
And a lot of times I think that we're waiting for God when God is waiting on us. Jesus walks into a city, John chapter 5. Here's this man. He's been molded and shaped by his culture. But 38 years he's sitting there with potential. And Jesus speaks a word and asks him, what do you want? We know what everybody else wants, but what do you want? And then when he was able to find out that Jesus was challenging him, all of a sudden, Jesus activates his potential. And he walks into our lives that are actual strategists. The issue is we want everything free. Nobody's willing to pay the price. It's your conversation. It's your conversation. What are you willing to pay for your freedom? You got to pay something.
Right.
And a lot of times I think that we're waiting for God when God is waiting on us. Jesus walks into a city, John chapter 5. Here's this man. He's been molded and shaped by his culture. But 38 years he's sitting there with potential. And Jesus speaks a word and asks him, what do you want? We know what everybody else wants, but what do you want? And then when he was able to find out that Jesus was challenging him, all of a sudden, Jesus activates his potential and he walks out. 38 years he's immobilized because he doesn't know who he is. But then one word changed his life. And that means that he always had the potential to walk, but he gave his personal power away to culture.
Oh, my.
Take your personal power back.
Take it back. I'm excited. Before we move on, I want you to take a minute. I know that you are writing a book or have written a book. Tell us about that book and tell us about what made you, out of all the things that you could write about, what made you write about this?
I'm writing 2 books. They're both due out in October. One is the Prayer Warriors Manual, the Prayer Warriors Way, teaching about prayer. And one of the reasons why I started writing about prayer is because nothing prohibits prayer from changing things. Nothing. So prayer can go where you can never go. Prayer can go in the boardroom and negotiate for you. It can go in the courtroom. Prayer can go because prayer requires words, and words have power, presence, prophetic implication, no geographical limitation. So prayer can do for you in 1 minute what you cannot do for yourself in a lifetime. So that's the first book in prayer. The second book is called Soul Fast. And it's not about what you're eating, but it's about what's eating you. And most people are walking around with a hole in their soul, and they're filling it with things instead of filling it with God. And so the Soul Fast, I believe that one of the greatest movements that we're about to see is the movement of the healing of the soul. And when you heal your soul, you can heal your world. And so I believe that the Muslims fast, and it's the largest amount of people that fast together in the earth realm. But I believe that God is going to do something supernatural for the church, and it's going to take prayer and fasting. And this is not just restraining from eating, but it is cutting off, because fasting is abstinence, right? It's the cutting off of something. So we've cut off food long enough. Now it's time to cut off folly. It's time to cut off negativity. And so I'm believing God that every church, every Christian church will join me in the soul fast, because it's time for us to rise up. The enemy has stripped us of our identity, but every other institution in this world is broken. Government is broken. Education is broken. The only institution that is left that is not broken is the church. And this is the era that the church is rising. My job really, Bishop, is to be an Aaron and a Hur to pastors. I am not Moses. I'm the girl that holds the visionary up. And I'm the girl that is called to articulate the vision of the visionary and empower the people to bring it to pass. And I believe this is the hour for prayer. One of the reasons why there has been so much penetration is because our intercessors and prayer warriors don't know how to tap into power. If you bring a situation to God, you are actually exacerbating the situation. But instead, what we need to do is empower prayer warriors and intercessors to go up to heaven, come down with the blueprint, and begin to decree and declare it over the earth realm. We are going to begin to decree. We're going to decree what we want to see, not what we don't want. God calling those things that be not as though they are. And I believe that God is going to raise up the Daniels, the intercessors, the Annas. And I just see the equipping of the church so that great men and women of God like you and you, Bishop, can go ahead, stay up on the mountain, hear from God, while the next layer of leadership lead the people as the intercessors begin to birth out the will and the plan and the purpose of God. And I'm praying, this is my prayer, I'm praying that we would at least have at least 1 million people during next year, during the 40 days of Lent, at least 1 million Christians praying for 40 days, because I believe that if we can just unify the body, we can see some breakthroughs.
Absolutely.
Unity is simple to me. Unity is when you have everyone seeing the same thing the same way and saying it the same way. And if you have a vision, and if you articulate your vision one way, unity is when your people are able to see your vision the same way and say it the same way that you see it.
Hallelujah. Glory to God. That's exciting. That's exciting. We've got some good stuff going on here. It occurs to me,
Jesus.
So many people are talking about coming to our meeting in Houston and to be in Lakeland and the great church with Pastor Joel Osteen. And I want to thank you, Pastor, for opening up your doors to us. That's a wonderful thing to do. So many people are coming to get something and to receive something. But wouldn't it make a huge impact if we would start praying now?
Yes.
And start decreeing now.
Yes.
And start declaring now that by the time we got there, we came to see the manifestation of what we have already prayed and declared and stood on. You might say, well, I can't even go, but you can pray. And you can send prayer. And you can reap a harvest from that, because thousands and thousands of women are coming from all over the world. They're coming across the ocean to meet at that church, expecting a move of God in Houston. And there is going to be a supernatural release. It's not just a parading of speakers. You know, you don't need a place to preach. She doesn't need, I don't either. This is not the parading of flesh. A move of God is needed like never before. The enemy has penetrated in some places that he should have never been able to penetrate. But the Bible didn't say send for the men. It said send for the women of mourning and let them take up a wailing. I appreciate men. I did Manpower. We had a great meeting. It was wonderful. But when you start talking about real intercession and the birthing,
women are birthers.
Women are birthers. And I'm praying that there's going to be such a birthing of vision and strategy.
That's it.
I didn't know God had given you that word too. I thought that was my word.
That's it. Well, Bishop, here's the bottom line. The bottom line is this. The bottom line is this. And I say this because this is what God says about you and says about First Lady. You are the voice. You are the one that he's raised with the anti-ministry. There's no other institution that the world can turn to but the church. And once God raises up a man, there has to be a cause, but there has to be a crisis. And we have a world in crisis.
Right.
And like David, what I hear you saying, is there not a cause?
Right.
But I see God building a cabinet around you in this season.
Yes.
I see him building it. You have to go where you're going, and there's a whole host of us that are praying you through. When Hannah was pregnant with a son, heaven was pregnant with a prophet. And we are birthing.
Wait a minute. That's so great. I wish I had wrote it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hannah's tears.
Lord.
Hannah.
Say that again. Oh, no. I gotta go back to it. When Hannah was pregnant with the son.
When Hannah was pregnant with a son, heaven was pregnant with a prophet. But Hannah just did not have one son. She had triplets. She birthed one naturally, but the other two came through the Spirit. Because behind Samuel that she birthed was Saul and David, which she could not see in the realm of the Spirit. Now, what happened was, heaven was in its third trimester. And as she was crying, her tears were an indication that the water had broken in heaven. And many people in this season have got confused with demonic attack and their contraction. And I want to say to people that are here tonight, and I want to say to people that are viewing, what you are going through is not a demonic attack. What you are going through is heaven's contraction. And you are getting ready to be delivered. And your tears means that water is broken. Every Hannah needs a Penina. And you see, you keep bringing Penina to God and asking God to move Penina out of the way. But Penina serves a purpose. Penina means pearl. And a pearl comes from hardship. And so a lot of people that are in your life, they've been through something. But God is an economist. God does not waste any experience. So since they're going to be mean to you anyway, God is going to use Penina to be your midwife.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of ministries, the womb, every ministry has a womb. Every business has a womb.
Yeah.
Every family has a womb.
Yes.
David had to be birthed out of rejection. Rejection is not a sign that there's something wrong with you. Rejection is a divine announcement that that person no longer has the capacity for your greatness. So, I'm telling you.
Listen, we're going to go further. Listen, are y'all getting anything out of this?
Stop crying. Stop. I just want to say to people, stop crying. Push. This is not the time for giving up. It's the time to push. You've been waiting all your life for this moment in time. I'm not letting any demonic force make me get confused with what God is doing. I'm not crazy, I'm pregnant. And this is the world is in crisis. The world is in whenever God is getting ready to birth a person out of a country or situation, that country has to go in crisis. The economic crisis that the world is faced with today simply means that God is birthing out the next generation of leaders.
Absolutely. I'm excited about this. I'm sure if you got just an itty bitty bit of the Holy Ghost, you can sense the anointing that's in this room, and it's a fresh anointing. This is some old warmed over like a baby. This is a fresh move of the Holy Spirit. It's a divine operation of the Holy Ghost. And the questions you've been asking from God, He is now ready to answer and release. We're going to go further.